Well, I gotta ask, so well, what about the downstream implications of good, right? And so let's just use the very basic example. I'm feeding information on my own personal health that I get from doctors into AI to get a result, right? And so is that ethical or not? Because in some respects, it's going off of trained data, lots of data points, should be able to draw conclusions better. But then there's a conversational piece that follows up after it on what you should do about it that kind of gets a little fuzzy. And then if you just give you another piece of food for thought, if you then think about it, you're like, well, that's good for the consumer, but what does that do to the medical industry as a whole? Is that good? Right? Does that support our commerce and our economy and jobs and all those kinds of things?
I mean, if you give permission to use the information, so is it ethically viable that they're allowed to use it to trade it on stuff since permission was implicitly given?
Yeah, I would think so, assuming that you're not hosting a private instance or anything like that, right?
Yeah, how do you know?
Yeah, that's right. Because there's not, I mean, there are some kind of audit logs and things like that in some of the AI platforms, but generally speaking, you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But even bigger than the actual is it retraining data on your data is who decides, Steve, to your definition of ethics, who decides what's good?
Well, the interesting piece that AI has brought to this conversation is in the past, you knew that if you were talking to a human or interacting with a machine. And those lines are blurred right now. When people can be talking with a bot and think that it's a human, that's a new phenomenon that it's
Mhm.
past the test to convince a human that it's human. So that's really where AI is forging new territory on where do we draw the guidelines. And I think California just passed legislation that a bot has to announce that it is a bot and can't convince somebody that it's a human. And I think there needs to be more legislation there. The definition of good from an individual perspective goes back to the beginning of time, but AI in this equation is kind of new.
So I was gonna say, I'm trying to figure out how do you even create legislation on something like this? What kind of framework would we be using? Because at some point, AI is going to be some kind of being, and do we give it the same kind of laws that humans have? Or are we going to treat it the same way? Or are we going to treat it like an outsider too? Like how does that play in?
Well, I think that is the crux of the conversation. Can have human rights is something that we're going to be talking about. And in my research, the answer is no.